The Chrysos Heirs will die. That's something we've known was going to happen for a long time. In fact, it was literally prophesized. And everyone's talking about these death prophecies and trying to predict when and how they're going to happen. And don't get me wrong, we'll cover that too. But for me, I'm more questioning what happens next. Let's assume that in 3.3 or max 3.4 that all the Chrysos Heirs die, like how the 3.3 trailer is hinting at. That's still a minimum of 3 patches in Amphoreus left to go. So what's going to happen in those next 3 or 4 patches if we presume that most of the cast will die off? Well, I think the key to solving that question lies in 2 things: the Trailblazer and Era Nova itself. So today we're not just going to cover the deaths of the Chrysos Heirs, but also what happens after they die and how the Trailblazer is going to be the key for solving everything. But before that, if you like these types of theory videos, let me know by liking and subscribing. And as always, leave your own thoughts and theories in the comments below. By the way, I'm still a little sick. You might be able to hear it a bit in my voice, but I really wanted to try to get this video out before 3.3 came out. So just letting you know in case you could hear it a bit in my voice. With that all being said, let's get right into it. Let's start with these infamous death prophecies that linger over the demigods, as we should understand how the Chrysos Heirs will meet their ends before we can get into what happens afterwards. It's actually in the original prophecy of the Flame Chase that the Chrysos Heirs will meet their end in this journey. Quote, "O Majesty of the 12 Titans, pillars of the world, we seek your divinity to mend the rifts of the world. Fill our bodies with blood of gold till we wither in willing service to the prophecy. All shall bid farewell to one, and that person alone will witness the miracle." The key words here are wither in willing service to the prophecy, implying from the beginning that they have to die in order for Era Nova to happen. Of course, there is mention that only one will see the miracle, but we'll cover that in a second. Knowing that the original prophecy already mentions the deaths of the Chrysos Heirs, it would make sense that each will receive a prophecy of their own demise. That way, once they take on their core flame, they know from the beginning that they are not the one chosen to witness Era Nova, that they will become a sacrifice for the cause. Whether intentional or not, this might have ensured that there would be no infighting between the Chrysos Heirs, as they would know who is already prophesied to die from the beginning. There would be no need to fight to be the last one living. Now let's start going over each of these individual prophecies and how we might be able to interpret them and how each of them will meet their end. Starting with Aglaia, "You shall have your final bath in warm and radiant gold." I saw Nova Impact point this out in the 3.3 trailer, where it looks like golden liquid is flooding a room and there's golden threads spread around the room, and it does look like a fairly good candidate. And we do know that Aglaia is on her last legs in terms of her soul. The only thing is I can't really see Aglaia leaving Akama, and by the design of this room, it looks like it would be from the new area being introduced. The reason why I say I can't really see her leaving Akama is because assumingly she has to be there in order for her golden thread to operate as a communications for everyone in Akama. I don't know, maybe because this is the last core flame and she's needed for this mission, she might just go ahead and do it. In terms of Noxa, he already died right after receiving his prophecy. "You shall transcend the peaks of purity and return to corruption and hardship," which is kind of ironic because the point of a prophecy is to warn you about what's gonna happen next. And basically everything happened even before he received the prophecy. He answered the question of how Amphoreus functions and was then declared a blasphemer as he entered Kefli's soul and was sent to be executed. Castris is actually fairly similar. "You shall wither, and through that the dead will sprout again from the remains and be reborn from the dead flame." This is also another example of a character technically dying right after receiving the prophecy, as Castris' entrance in the Netherworld is in a way her death, and she did open the gate to the Netherworld for the dead to sprout and was reborn with the dead flame, as Polixia was never really alive in this cycle. Hi, so future Jordan here. I kind of messed up ish, not really. It's more like I missed some information. I forgot that Castris technically had another prophecy before this one, or was a different one. It was at the end of the Sea of Flowers, "The souls of the living shall warm thy fingertips, and after an embrace there shall be eternal separation." Now this was given by Treeby, and she referred to the prophecies talking about Castris, because this kind of implies that Castris had 2 prophecies. It's a little weird, like, because I don't know what prophecy Tribe is referring to this. Maybe someone can tell me, because maybe I missed information. Also, it makes me a little concerned because later in this video I talk about Hyacinth's death. I didn't think that she had a prophecy because she never took the core flame trial yet, but maybe she did, because when Tribe said this was at the end of 3.1, which implies that Castrus's prophecy existed before she went to get the core flame. If anyone out there knows Hyacinth's prophecy, please comment it below, because I scoured the internet. I looked through footage. I mean, I couldn't sit down and watch every single second of all the quests for this because it just would have taken too much time. So if it does exist, let me know. If it doesn't, then just continue with this video, Cypher's is a bit interesting. You shall walk with greed and die over petty change. The first part basically describes her current life. She literally steals and values jewels and money, but also the greed may describe her selfish nature and the fear of keeping her life when she knows that she has to die eventually, and thus abandoning the flame chase. The second part we might have actually seen in the trailer. When Cypher was fighting the Flame Weaver and reaching out for her coin, the Flame Weaver caught her. Out of all the money and jewels that Cypher has, her most valued one is that coin, and a single coin can be considered petty change. Being caught by the Flame Weaver as she's reaching out for it, it's literally dying over petty change. My days is probably the most straightforward. One day you shall die with a wound in your back. We know that his weakness is the 10th thoracic vertebra, and we know that the Flame Weaver knows that as well, so fairly clear with that one. Trebios is also quite straightforward. You shall shatter into 1,000 fragments and wither on the soil of foreign lands. Shatter to 1,000 pieces refers to the fact that she was split into 1,000 small versions of herself, and she will die away from her home. In a weird way, this is the least descriptive of all of the prophecies, because it doesn't describe anything else that will happen other than she will split apart in 1,000 pieces. In terms of Hyacinth, we don't know her prophecy yet because she hasn't reached the core flame, but from the third Golden Epic trailer, we might be able to make a possible scenario. It seems like she'll gain the ability to fly and gain wings when she obtains the core flame, but from the trailer, it seems like the feather on her wings are falling off and she falls and crashes to the ground. As she inherits the Sky Titan that holds the power to basically become the sun and light up the sky, her death might be a reference to Icarus. In Greek mythology, Icarus was the son of a famous craftsman, Daedalus, who built wings from beeswax to escape a large tower. Daedalus instructed Icarus to not fly too close to the sun or the wings would melt, and Icarus didn't listen and fell and drowned in the sea underneath them. It's possible that Hyacinth might meet a similar end, as she has ties to the sun and her death seems to be related to her wings failing. In a tragic way, it might be that once she is at her highest and accomplished the nigh impossible feat of passing the trial of the sky, she will then very literally fall from her hubris, as that is the lesson from the original Icarus myth. This is all the currently known prophecies as far as I'm aware. I think we'll probably get 2 to 3 more from Phainon, Hyacinth, and possibly Saridra depending on her current situation. We don't know much about Saridra. We know that she has the core flame of law, she united the Chrysos Heirs and turned the prophecy into law, which implies that she's really old. Based on what we know, the flame chase officially started 100 years after Trebios left Yonisopolis, which would probably make her the second oldest demigod after Trebios herself. Based on what they say about her in one of the Golden Epic trailers, she buried time itself, which could mean that she somehow froze herself to when the flame chase is nearing its end. I think we'll see her in the 3.3 story. Burying time implies to me that she's not dead, but like biding her time for something. And I'm guessing she'll probably play a pretty big role in the ending of the flame chase. Which brings me to a key point in the flame chase prophecy. All shall bid farewell to one, and that person alone will witness the miracle. We all assumed it would be Phainon because he's supposed to inherit Kefali's core flame, and that he is the Flame Weaver or a version of him. But what if it's not actually the case? What if it's not actually Phainon to witness Aranova, but the Trailblazer? Hold on, I know it's a bit of a crazy claim, and I'll admit this one's a bit of a cracked theory, but I do think I have some interesting points here. In the last cycle, Kefali wasn't the last demigod to go. Even the other Chrysos heirs of that cycle visited him before their Aranova, and Polixia was technically the one that witnessed the end. The Chrysos heir during their trial received their prophecy of death, but the Trailblazer didn't, and they have the core flame of time, making them a demigod without a death prophecy. Well, actually, they did receive a prophecy kind of from Acheron near the end? Fear not, as a touch of red will be awaiting you at the end of the path. It guides you and illuminates your way out. By doing so, you'll eventually reunite in the warmth of the sunlight. Not sure if this really counts, but it is phrased in a similar fashion enough for me to at least mention it, right? And I'm also not really sure if this applies to the MC in Amphoreus or the MC's life in general. But if we do apply it to Amphoreus because it was given in this region, it still supports the idea that the Trailblazer will be the one to see Era Nova, as it mentions a touch of red will illuminate their way out, possibly implying a way out of Amphoreus and that they will reunite with the warmth of the sun, which might imply that they will see the new world's light. There's also another aspect of this that follows that same logic, which is that the MC follows the path of the Trailblaze, and in Amphoreus at least, path of remembrance as well, which there's actually a lot of similarities between the two paths, but I'll leave that for another video. Based on the two paths, it's literally their job to bear witness and experience Amphoreus and thus Era Nova. There's actually a really key point that I feel like a lot of people overlook, that there was no one that could inherit Oryx's core flame until the Trailblazer came along, which also means if Amphoreus is a simulation based off the memories, whom I speculated before is the Flame Reaver / Phainon's memories, because I think he's the Lord Ravager stuck on Amphoreus, then that would mean that in the original Amphoreus, no one was able to take the core flame of time, then that would mean Era Nova never happened. After I made the theory about Phainon, I kept coming back to the question, why was it so important that the story emphasized that the Chrysos heirs of the previous cycle became the Titans in the next? Then it occurred to me that if the Trailblazer wasn't here, they actually couldn't go to the next cycle. That's why it's so important to have the Trailblazer take the core flame of time, because they can now actually go to Era Nova. And that should be a good thing, right? Well, to be honest, we don't know what's gonna happen. Yes, the Chrysos heirs will now recreate the world, which is probably how we're gonna meet the rest of the Chrysos heirs we haven't seen yet, but Amphoreus is a simulation, which let's just say my theory is right about it being made from Phainon's memories, and if there was never anyone compatible with Oryx in the original Amphoreus, then Era Nova never happened there, and thus the simulation has nothing to go off of. So will the simulation adjust and create something based off the information they know from Phainon's Memoria data? Or will it break apart? Or will something completely different happen? To answer that, let's start analyzing what exactly is Amphoreus. The 3.2 story establishes two main things. Chrysos heirs, once receiving a core flame, will become the Titan in the next cycle, and that the world is literally made from memories. The whole aspect of alchemy and Anox's study boils down to confirming that all things are built from memories from the previous world-bearing Titan. That and the conversation from Black Swan fully confirms that Amphoreus is a world built on Memoria. So by that definition, all people native to Amphoreus are memetic beings. With that in mind, it would mean that the act of Era Nova and the world-bearing Titan recreating the world are forms of dream weaving. Dream weaving is the act of reforming and molding Memoria, usually to shape into a specific objects. It was how the dream world of Penacony was built, from the naturally high levels of Memoria in the Asdana star system. While the concept of it is from Penacony, the actual act of controlling and manipulating Memoria is more akin to the Memo Keepers, hence why Black Swan and Rekka are seemingly most powerful in Penacony. So if Era Nova itself is a massive and powerful form of dream weaving or Memoria manipulation, then the act itself would inherently be tied to the remembrance. And while dream weavers don't necessarily have to be pathstriders of the remembrance, the act of reshaping a world of Memoria by a single person would definitely be something only someone at the level of an Emanator of remembrance would be able to do. Now, am I saying that Phainon will become an Emanator of remembrance? No. God, no. It's less so that they have the power of the remembrance, but more what is actually powering Era Nova, the core flames. I mentioned this quite a bit before, that I believe that the core flames are the remnants of the authority of an Emanator of remembrance, whom I think is March 7th. And it's always bothered me, what is the actual importance of the core flames? What is the actual thing that they're doing to start Era Nova? And 3.2 actually gave us a potential answer. If the world is made of Memoria and the world-bearing Titan must reshape Amphoreus, then gathering the core flames together would grant that demigod the temporary power of the Emanator of remembrance, allowing them to actually remake Amphoreus from their memory. And I think that's what's gonna happen next. 3.3 will be the final chase for the core flames against the Flame Weaver, and against all odds, Phainon, who is confirmed to claim his core flame in this patch, you can see this sword is different from his usual in this trailer, will bring forward Era Nova. Though there is another part of this, and that Phainon might not actually be able to control what Amphoreus will look like in the next cycle. All it said was Amphoreus will be reshaped by Phainon's memories of this world. It never said that he could control the outcome. I mean, if you think about it, why would Chrysos, the current world-bearing titan, ever make the Black Tide if they could control everything? Or even if we say the Black Tide has nothing to do with those laws, why would he make his good friends that became strife, death, and trickery be known as the Calamity Titans? Because he had no control. Everything was shaped from his memories, and logic adjusted the memories he didn't have. Similar to how when people are recalling something, it's not perfect. There will be alterations because your brain has to make it fit the logic patterns of what happened. He may have remembered that those 3 titans were always considered the Calamity Titans, and thus, even though they were his companions, their identity as the 3 Calamity Titans were more logical, making that the new reality. And another reason why I think that Phainon won't have control over how the next cycle is made is because he doesn't necessarily have to be alive at the end of the cycle. He just has to have the core flame. We know from 3.2 that Chrysos didn't have his human form anymore, even though the flame chase of that era hadn't ended at that time, which could imply that his human form died. But the core flame was still retrieved, and he still built out this cycle from his memories, which adds credence to the concept that the Trailblazer will be the one that witnessed Era Nova. It could be that after Phainon gains the core flame, he fights the Flame Reaver for revenge. I mean, it was basically his whole entire thing. But he dies while protecting the Trailblazer, who's trying to bring the core flame to the vortex of Genesis to start Era Nova. Now, the thing about Phainon creating the new cycle is that he's actually pretty unique. From what we know, he has a perfect memory, and I don't think this is just some random character trait. I believe if Star Rail wrote this detail about a guy who's supposed to remake the mimetic world from his memories, then he probably actually does have perfect memory, which isn't a good thing, because I'm not sure if you remember, but Amphoreus is currently being, destroyed right now. And I think that's the next arc of Amphoreus. Phainon recreated the world, but still a world that's going to be destroyed. And the reason why I say that the Trailblazer will be the one that witnesses Era Nova is because someone has to go out and gather the new Titans, who are the Chrysos Heirs that we know. And it can't be Phainon because he's literally too busy carrying the world on his shoulders. They will now be the new rulers of Amphoreus, but with all the powers of the Titans. And they need to stop the Flame Weaver, who might be the Lord Ravager, from escaping Amphoreus, because they now have the best shot, as all of the original Chrysos Heirs would be alive, together, and powered up. Also, because in this simulation, if it's truly a loop of the Flame Reaver's memories, the gathering of the core flames / the power of the Emanator remembrance might actually be the key that awakens said Emanator, because all of those authorities are back together for the first time. Before I sign off, I have a couple thoughts that I couldn't really fit into the script of this video. First, I think that activating Era Nova might actually allow the rest of the Astral Express crew to enter Amphoreus. Another thing to note is that it seems like the Astral Express is able to enter Amphoreus bypassing Lygus, as the Herda was stopped, but Dan Heng and the MC were able to make it through. It might be something along the lines of having some sort of relationship with March. The second is the Flame Reaver. Now, if Amphoreus truly is a prison built from the Flame Reaver's memories, then there would be something equivalent to the flame chase in the original Amphoreus. And my thought right now is the Black Tide was the destruction attacking Amphoreus, and somehow the original flame chase ritual might have been able to invoke something that would have stopped said destruction. And we do know that no one was compatible with the core flame of time until the Trailblazer, so that could have been the case as well in the original Amphoreus, and that might have been why the destruction ended up taking over the original Amphoreus, because they couldn't complete the flame chase. From the 3.3 trailer, the Flame Reaver mentioned something along the lines of, "Our flame, it has to be me, cycles ending." I couldn't make it out very well, but if what I said is actually the case, then it actually supports the idea that either the Flame Reaver is trying to be the one that makes Era Nova happen, but by his own hands, or the core flames are the key for him to break out of the prison cycle, or honestly both. I also think it's possible that the original Amphoreus might have followed the remembrance as well, kind of like how Belobog follows the preservation. Because there's a lot of mentions of time and memory in Amphoreus, it would make sense that it's transferred from the original Amphoreus. It would make an interesting concept because then the Flame Reaver might have been a former past strider of the remembrance, maybe even a former memo keeper. I mean, like, the whole idea of Phainon having to reshape the memetic world during Era Nova might hint to this as an origin. The Flame Reaver does float around kind of like Black Swan, and him multiplying himself might be a Memoria manipulation technique. It also might play into the concept that the Lord Ravagers are beings that are tied to different paths, like Phantilia is a Heliobus who has ties with the Abundance, Iron Tomb who's able to mess with AI and technologies might have like a tie to the Erudition, and the chess player who has a very strategic approach might have ties with the Hunts. As we learned from Fei Xiao and Jing Yuan, the Hunt is actually very strategic in their actions. But I don't really know. Like I said, this is just me kind of spitballing my ideas out here. But that is the theory for today. If you made it this far in this video, thank you so much for watching. As always, leave your own thoughts and theories in the comments below, and hopefully I'm not immediately proven wrong this time. And with all of that being said, peace.